to the Adventuring Party for the first week of October 2021. This week, another delve into Gygax's Tome of Wisdom, and this time we actually make progress. The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop and really gaming the Irish way.
Welcome back, folks. Okay, the fire has been stoked. I've added another couple of logs of dirkwood to it.
Who are you?
Who am I? Well, I'm Savage Mick. Who are you?
Oh, I'm the Warlord Scarr, and I heard that there's time once again for a great tale from a great tome.
Yeah, well, before we do that though, I mean, obviously we have come up with character names and backstories, but we've yet to create those characters, do we?
I feel like we can hold off to level 3, because they're probably going to die between then and then.
Fair. We are, of course, folks, diving into the Tomes Gygaxian, and we're looking again at the First Ed D&D Dungeon Master's Guide. If you've been with us following along for the last couple of episodes, you'll know that we are racing through the book, having covered all of 11 pages in a little under 2 hours. So we're moving on now at a blistering pace. Please try and keep up.
Yeah.
To creating the player character.
Okay, so the first thing that this is a vitally important section because it reveals that everyone in the OSR is wrong.
About what, pray tell?
About rolling 3d6 for your stats in order. Gygax says, you will not create a character that's any good if you do that. As is very explicitly said here, while it is possible to generate some fairly playable characters by rolling 3d6, there is often an extended period of attempts at finding a suitable one due to the quirks of the dice. Furthermore, these rather marginal characters tend to have short life expectancy, which tends to discourage new players, as does having to make do with a character of a race or class which he or she can't or won't identify with. So, just to be absolutely clear, Gygax is pro. You get the stats to play the character you want to play. Now, he may have screwed this up in a previous book by putting in the Paladin and the Bard, which had massive stat requirements, but hey, we didn't say he was consistent. We said he had lots of defensive statements that just happen to contradict each other.
Yeah, this really did blow my mind, because I was kind of skimming through this section ahead of this and saw the 4 methods introduced and read them and went, okay, those seem fair. And then, as you say, realised, wait a second, none of these is roll 3d6, suck it up. Like, wherever that sort of Iron Man masochism came from, it ain't from old Gary.
I'm pretty sure you can trace it mostly to basic D&D, which was intended to be similar and a bit more go with what you roll. In there, presumably the stat modifiers and stuff were a lot more. I'm pretty sure you didn't have any penalties until you had like a 9 or an 8 in a stat back then. It has been a while since I've looked at my old black box. I think I gave that to someone. But yes, we have 4 methods for making actual AD&D characters listed here. Will I quickly go through them and then show a worked example?
Yeah, let's go real quick.
Okay. First one is the method that people are familiar with from 3rd Ed and 5th Ed, which is 46. Well, it's actually written in Gygaxian style, so where you say all scores are recorded and arranged in the order desired, and then says you roll 4d6 and drop the lowest. Because Gygax likes sentence paragraph structure to be completely on its head. Method 2 is where you roll 3d6 12 times, take the best 6, and put those in the order you want. Then there's method 3, where you roll 3d6 in order 6 times for each stat, and take the best of each of the 6 rolls for each of your stats. And then method 4, you roll 3d6 in order 12 times, and take the character of the 12 characters. You take the one you like the most look of, and toss the rest out. Presumably those will be like village bandits or, teamsters or something.
Yeah, it's like pretty forgiving. No matter, I'm pretty sure I've played many a game of D&D that had less forgiving methods than that used at the start at character creation.
So I took the liberty of doing these out in a dice bot. Do you want to give an example of how those different methods turn out for? I just used a fighter as my explanation, as my thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So for method 1, the 46 arrange as you like, drop the lowest. I managed to get my example fighter to have a strength of 17, a dex of 12, a con of 13, int of 10, wisdom of 10, charisma of 9. All in all, I would say a fairly typical character.
A couple of good stats, and then a lot of stuff that's playable but not particularly noteworthy.
Now, for method 2, where you roll 3d6 12 times, I got strength 16, dex 13, con 15, int 12, wisdom 13, and charisma 11. So not quite the same peaks, but overall, this is, I think, is a better overall character.
So what was the highest stat? 16?
Yeah.
And the lowest?
The lowest was an 11. So that's if you want people who don't really have weaknesses.
Yeah. Method 3.
Method 3, where is like you roll 6 times for each stat with 3d6.
Go on.
This one is where...
Flat 16s.
This one went off the rails a little.
Can I make a prediction?
Okay.
18, 18, 17, 17, 16, 16.
No, actually. The 3d6 are not so kind. We got strength of 12, dex of 12, con of 15, int of 17, wisdom 12, and charisma 11. So, by happenstance, we have ended up with basically a wizard, and a pretty tough wizard at that. But,
yeah.
So...
Pretty good character.
Good character, but not the fighter we were originally intending. So, this is a method for if you wish to surprise yourself which class you're good at.
Yeah.
And then method 4, where you roll 12 characters on 3d6 in order. Do you want to guess how that turned out?
I kind of feel like it's going to be roughly the same as the first one. How'd it go?
Strength 13, dex 15, con 12, int 8, wisdom 7, charisma 7.
That was the best one?
That was the best one for a fighter out of 12 rolls.
Okay.
So, if you want that feeling of old school weaknesses, I think maybe method 4 is for you.
But at least you get 12 to choose from, so you get to pick where you're a bit gammy. Okay, so nothing crazy, really, out of any of those 4.
Not too crazy, but, there's noticeable differences between them, I think. And, there's a couple of different, like, you have options there. You have options to have good around the board, or standard-y stats, or discovery stats where you have to pick.
Yeah, method 3 kind of give you, well, he's a real smart fighter. Is he much of a fighter? We'll find out. Definitely, you got to be flexible, I think. Of course, we haven't gotten to picking your race or class yet, so we're just raw numbers right now.
Yeah, I can't remember. I feel like there was like stat minimums to count as to take race. Like you had to have like a con of like 12 or 13 to be a dwarf or something, or maybe no, it wasn't maybe that high. Maybe it was like 9 or 10.
Well, let's move on and find out. But yeah, okay. So Gary has given us a bunch of different ways to roll stats. None of them particularly punishing, and certainly none of them as sort of baseline as you get what you get and don't get upset. Roll 3d6. Okay, so that's player characters sorted for stats.
There's a section on NPCs, and which brings across the inherent assumption that, you definitely have to roll stats for important NPCs. It doesn't specify how important and where the cutoff is, and it doesn't say there's a particular point where you can just assume that a random peasant has 10s and everything or anything like that. But there is a differentiation between general characters and special characters. So, like, general characters basically can't roll 1s or 6s on their 3d6 in order. Whereas henchmen get, like, a bonus for their class ability. So, like, they don't roll 6s on the dice, they get +1 to each dice. So, your henchmen that you've put the effort into recruiting, they will at least be good at their main job, but the rest will be completely random. So you can have your strength 17, con 6, henchman fighter if you really want.
Yep. Well, I mean, they're hired help. They're not the main stars.
Then there's this very weird paragraph on how to be mean with people trying to wish themselves to have 18 in all their stats.
So it's titled The Effect of Wishes on Character Ability Scores. And it is just thrown in here out of nowhere, really. At this point, we're like, what's wish? What?
Yeah.
I think we could read this, can we?
Sure, I'll go through. It is quite usual for players to use wishes or alter reality spells found on scrolls to increase their ability scores in desired areas, whatever the areas might be. It is strongly suggested that you place no restrictions upon such use of wishes. However, at some point it must be made more difficult to go up in ability, or else many characters will eventually be running around with several 18s or even higher. Therefore, when any ability score reaches 16, then it should be ruled a wish will have the effect of increasing the ability by only 1/10 of a point. Thus, by means of wishes or alter reality spells, a charisma score of 16 can only be raised to 17 by the use of 10 such wishes, the score going from 16 to 16.1, 16.2, and so on. It is not to say that magical books or devices cannot raise scores of 16 or better a full point. This prohibition is only on wishes.
This is so dumb. Actually, it's dumb in two directions. First of all, if you've got a wish for something cool. Wish for a boat, or a kingdom, or a talking animal sidekick. Don't wish for, one of my numbers comes up. That's dumb.
Yes, but also that should be player advice, not GM secret information.
Fine. Players can't be trusted. Okay, but, 1/10 of a point. Well, let me just note that down on my character sheet right beside this other note that says, get bent. That is so meh. Is that the best you can do, Gary? Not attach any sort of interesting condition to it. No. I'm just going to dick move them out of any actual useful increase.
Okay, first off, I get this distinct impression that Gary was handing out way too many wishes in his games, and people were at the point where they would actually have 10 wishes stored up.
See, it wish inflation going on and wish depreciation.
Well, it's sort of known that he's basically had to, all the cool magic items that he was playtesting for future editions of the game, he basically had to give out to all of his players. So those original characters like Robolar, Tensor, they all ended up with way too many magic items of various abilities. But yeah, it's like, again, I feel like Gary is sort of projecting his experience onto everyone, where, I don't think getting 10 wishes is going to be a problem for most games.
I think I'd just treat that one as advice and carry on. If a player were to wish for a stat bump, I guarantee you it would come with a talking animal sidekick, especially one they didn't want. Because if you don't wish for cool stuff just happens to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so
there's a short section on you don't roll random personalities for player characters. That's for NPCs. There's a party that needs to be pointed out. Also, a bit of making sure you know that ladies are not as tall as men. That's apparently a thing that needs to be pointed out.
On average.
There's a section of dice rolls involved in that.
Basically, your game should be about the extraordinary, so, maybe you're an extraordinary short fighter. Like Wolverine. Or Tom Cruise. The stuff where game books or game rule books tend to pull from whatever the census is on national averages here and there is always asking for somebody to go, well, actually, or but in this case. It's like, yeah, take it as generalized guidance. Characters in this world are generally not 8 feet tall as a rule. Okay.
Then there's a interesting section where you can roll for a random secondary skill, which is basically just you have a 4% chance of being a fisherman or fisher person, 3% chance of being a leather worker, a nearly 20% chance of having no skill of measurable worth, or a 14% 50% chance of roll twice and get 2, maybe, assuming you don't roll double no skill of measurable worth. Yeah, this is essentially like flavor mechanic, but it has no like actual mechanics attached to it. So it's more like a flavor thing, a role-playing hook. Because the assumption is that, if you have any professional skills, they are your class. And this was way before there was like detailed skill systems in D&D, and most things were handled just by rolling a d6, and if the GM liked the number, you succeeded. So it's just an interesting little thing where like we have this option where it is suggested that the GM looks favorably on someone who attempts making arrows who's actually a Fletcher, but it's not a really strong thing. It's mainly just a random table of background stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe you're a limner, maybe you're a gambler. Maybe you know nothing but either of these things, and it never really affect your game. It's underbaked. Yeah, sure. Stick on the character sheet and call it flavor.
Then there's one of the favorite elements of the book for me is where Gary goes off on a nearly quarter page rant about how you should definitely always start at level 1.
Right. Then maybe your system should definitely always make sense at level 1.
It's just the unambiguous enthusiasm for the feeling of being level 1 and about to die if you so much as sneeze in the wrong direction. As a general rule, the greatest thrill for any neophyte player will be the first adventure, where he or she doesn't have any real idea what is happening, how powerful any encountered monster is, or what rewards will be gained from the adventure. This assumes survival, and you should gear your dungeon to accommodate first level players. If your campaign has a mixture of experienced and inexperienced player, you should arrange for the two groups to adventure separately, possibly in separate dungeons at first. Allow the novice players to learn for themselves and give experienced players tougher situations to face, for they already understand most of what is happening, quite unlike true first level adventurers of the would-be sort, were such persons to actually exist.
Must be nice having a full-time job running games, multiple tables and campaigns, just to make sure that you're bringing people along at the right rate. That's okay.
Yeah, it's just this idea. It's just like that there is nothing more important than the horrible confusion of being a new player and being thrown in with only other new players who don't even know what a goblin is, and being asked to run through your first 5 or 6 characters as the bodies pile up, while meanwhile, on a separate table, like the veterans are just waiting for the GM to become available so they can, fight a troll or something. Yeah, it definitely does speak to I run games five nights a week in my fancy Wisconsin house and don't have to worry about...
You're obsessed with Gary Gygax's house, aren't you? Have you ever visited it?
No, I don't. But it's just such a vital piece of context, because if I didn't know that, I would just assume that Gygax was a senile madman. But by the fact that I've been told by multiple accounts, Gygax's own and all of his friends, that they had games with 10 players in them, something like 5 nights a week, and then also they would occasionally have people GMing for Gygax. Without that context, stuff like this just doesn't make any sense. But the flip side of that is that Gygax does not provide that context in the book, and thus any GM reading this is forced, because it was like, we have 1 night a week. How am I supposed to split my party between new people and old people? And
it was a different time.
It was a different time, and Gygax didn't explain that it was a different time.
Well, I mean, in fairness, he was sort of writing it for his contemporaries at that time, who presumably all had huge houses in Wisconsin, and all had open calendars. I mean, I'm imagining the house something like Stalin's tomb, where a perfectly preserved Gygax is the centerpiece of the Gary Gygax Memorial Gaming Table. So you can play D&D on top of the glass enclosure, which keeps his perfectly preserved body. And every time you roll a 20, it comes a little bit closer to regeneration and arising again. To write, I know, Dungeon Master's Guide 2 or something. Right, character age, aging, disease, and death. Speaking of all of those things.
Yeah, so there's like a whole bunch of separate tables. One for humans and one for everyone else.
Yep. Get wrecked, weird creatures, humans forever, yeah.
Basically, everyone lives like multiple times as long as a human, except half-orcs. It was an interesting thing where the youngest character you could play as a human is a fighter of age 16, which is, fine for your anime protagonist style, young upcoming Luke Skywalker. Or if you're a half-orc, you could be a fighter as young as 14, because, those mixed bloods, they grow up quickly, don't they?
Why not 10? I mean, it's a little late. I mean, you're a long way into your allotment of years if you only decide to take up fighting at 14. Man, half-orcs really do get the worst end of the stick. When you end up palling around with people who are going to live 10 times longer than you, and they're wasting time trying to decide which door to go through. You can kind of understand why the half-orc's typical response is, to hell with this, follow me this way. Rawr! Like, these people do not have time.
There is one advantage, though, in that they can actually be a cleric of 21 to 24 years of age, where halflings apparently just don't get this whole religion thing, and can only be fighters or thieves.
Okay.
There's one other minor quirk that I wanted to point out, is that most of the humans are in the sort of 15 to 20-year-old bracket, except for wizards who started at least 26, or illusionists who are going to be at least 31, because illusion was still this special thing that Gygax wanted to big up. But when you look at the other races tables, for some reason, being a cleric is a major time investment for every other species. Like, you're a gnome cleric, you are at least 300 years old.
Right, yeah.
Like, a wizard gnome is only going to be 100 years old. But no. Religion is so important, apparently, to dwarves, elves, and gnomes, that they must spend centuries in the priesthood before they're allowed out to adventure.
Yeah, that one's kind of weird.
Like, it implies a story, is the thing. It's one of those things where it never gets elaborated on why it is this way, but just by being on the table, it implies things, and that's a neat feature, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. This is a hard one for me to get my head around. You do, because if you actually think, you just kind of think about what it would mean for each of these races, it's sort of horrifying, and also makes a lot of other things not make much sense. But yeah, the long-lived races have this weird advantage. Anything that's getting half the span or less. Humans who encounter these... Like, how do you even relate to someone who's 500 years old and only starting out? What the hell were they doing?
It also has this weird thing with the age categories things on the next page, where it implies that you're going to have to do some stat adjustments before you even start into your cleric, because there's a whole bunch of stat adjustments for ages depending on what.
Right, yeah. So they've broken it down as young adult, mature, middle-aged, old, and venerable, and they've given age ranges for each of those. So a venerable half-orc, the oldest you're likely to encounter, between 60 and 80 years old, whereas a mature gnome is probably somewhere between 90 and 300. So just sort of shaken off the adolescent fur and is starting to get off this whole adventuring thing. It's like has been knocking around longer than a bent double, war-wrecked and world-ruined half-orc. Okay. But yeah, you get these stat penalties and bonuses as you get older. So once you're old, take 2 points away from strength, 2 points from dexterity, and a point of constitution. You get 1 point of wisdom. Whoop-de-doo. Your spot checks just got a bit easier.
Yeah, it's an interesting. It implies a whole bunch of stat manipulation has to happen for everyone before they can even start, because you have to roll your age, and the age is important, and it has to be applied to you. So like I got the 17 strength. Well, it's going to take a few points off it before you if you're starting as a cleric, because clerics be old. Yeah, an interesting quirk. There's also a section on unnatural aging, which is one of those things that.
Wait, does that mean it's impossible to play a gnome cleric who isn't at least middle-aged?
Yes, that is. You could.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Fine. Can we move on?
I just wanted to point out the section where it very points out that casting wish spells, like from your stat, is supposed to make you older.
This again. Oh no. Right. Okay.
So like this is very different from the modern day where it's like, well, we want balanced wishes, so like you have to do very limited amount of things with them, or you'll risk losing your wish ability. Now then also it's like, no, you cast wish, there are 3 years gone off the end of your life.
You just know that interacts with the other wish rule we just encountered by said, okay, you get to ability score 16, took 1 wish, fine. Want to go to 17? It's going to take 10 wishes, but each of them is going to knock the same amount of time off your life. Thanks, Gary. 3 years for the first, and then 30 for the next point. Great.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and because it basically means that your maximum age, which I think the GM is supposed to secretly roll in a table that's there's a maximum age table 2 pages from now, which I guess the GM is supposed to secretly roll to see how long your maximum age is, so you can secretly keep track. Oh, you're going to cast Wish again. Interesting. Scribble, scribble, scribble.
People give out to me because I want to keep track of arrows. Oh my word, okay.
It's an interesting one. The use of a character's lifespan as a resource is an interesting thing. Anyway, we should probably get on to the big star of the next couple of pages, the disease and parasite tables.
Or where's the Paladin? Because that's how you handle this now. The Paladin touches me on the top of my tippity-toppity head, and I'm fine. Next encounter.
Yeah.
Was it always so?
Well, Paladins were rare back then, in theory.
That's true.
But yeah, it's like there's an entire table of your chance of getting a disease or parasites, which is modified by all kinds of living conditions, climates. The implication here is that anyone living like south of the Mediterranean is just going to die of worms before they're 22, which, when you think about it...
In fairness, not wrong. You know, it's a bigger issue. Well, it's not as big an issue today, but you don't see a lot of healthcare drives here in Northern Europe going, right, we really must sort out all these blindness worms that are basically everywhere. Yeah, it's, get down to the equatorial climates and a lot of things just living in the water.
Well, basically there's tables for your chance to get these things. Then there's tables for... There's a sort of multi-dimensional table for area of body affected, how severe it is.
No. Mucous membranes.
There's such...
Oh, the urine. I'm sorry. You've read Fatal, right? Or at least you've skimmed through it. I mean, you can see where they started from.
Yeah, this table
roll to see if you've got a urinary tract parasite. What's it do? Makes you go blind. How does that work? You don't want to know.
This is a blood and blood-forming organs, cardiovascular and renal, gastrointestinal diseases, generative organ diseases, which are, say, they cause no particular problems except spreading, which... Unless you get an 8 on your D8, which case it's a terminal, and okay, we can't make that joke anymore. We're after the 90s, we're not allowed to make those jokes.
Joints can get, you can get joint pain. I suppose if you're a 500-year-old cleric of something or other, joint pain might be an issue. Probably poor eyesight as well, with all that religious text studying. Right, so, I mean, does anyone make it out of character creation alive, is my question.
Yeah, well, this is...
Because this is still the character creation. What's this got to do with character creation?
It doesn't, though. It is just randomly slipped in here between the two different sections on character age. This is like, you have what the character's age means and stats. Then after it is the character's age and maximum age. But then there's, in between it, there's this disease table, which is more like a lifestyle table, which is sort of intended to force the players to go, ooh, you have a 2% chance per month of getting some horrible disease, unless you spend 5 gold a day on your luxury apartment. And presumably then we have the old keep them lean, make them pay for everything mindset there.
Right, yeah. Oh, your health is your wealth. So spend your wealth so that you have your health. Man, Gary really knows how to chip away. But that, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Age leads to infirmity leads to disease, and disease leads to
death. Okay, so there's multiple different types of death. Actually, well, there's more. I feel like there's a second death section later on. I feel like there might be a couple of different death sections, but this is mainly about death due to age and death due to disease. Shockingly enough, given the subject matter. But yes, characters.
No one has died by sword wound or spell yet, have they?
Not yet, no.
It's just horrible joint pain.
But yes, there's a complicated chart to say like exactly when your character is going to die, which leaves a weird worrying thing that I think most clerics might have a like solid 10% chance of having like a couple of years left in their life, because like a dwarf cleric starts at 250 and there's like a 10% chance that you're 250 plus D8 times 10 years from death.
I know there's other game systems are more noted for killing you in character creation, but this one's going to go pretty hard.
You're not dead. You don't die in character creation. You're just doomed in character creation.
Gygaxian mindset at work here. All right, so yeah, okay, you can die due to old age. This happens, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff: disease, disorder, parasitic infection. Yep, they can kill you too.
Yeah, the thing about it is that it really does speak to this idea of years will pass over the course of this campaign. It's not going to be a setup where you guys are going to start in June at level 1 and by September you're level 27 and fighting Demogorgon in his horrible pit. Like, no, this is the idea like it's going to take years in game for characters to get up a level, and dying of old age is actually a concern. You might want to look into some of those artifact level life potions that you've heard so much about. Maybe they'll find them in the lost caverns of Zocanth. How do you know? You'll have to go in and find out.
This is how you get liches. Like, it's direct. I mean, it's direct results of this sort of.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. I mean, I'm sure that there may be rules around somewhere for turning into a lich. I don't know if they're in this book or the Monster Manual, but
like in a world written by Gygax, like the old saying goes, "You're gonna die someday. Become a lich. Life is hard. Get a lich." Okay, character abilities then. He explains the basics: strength, intelligence, wisdom, dex, constitution, charisma. But wait. Roll back there a second. There's an extra section on exceptional strength. This is sort of gone by the wayside, but this stuck around for a few editions, this idea that strength above all else can be exceptional, and we're going to need a rule for that.
This was because they didn't have a standardized system for what a character ability score did. So to give fighters the edge, they had this thing that was like, you get to 18 strength, and then you roll an extra percentile, and that's your exceptional strength. So like, it's like you have like 18 33%, and that would be like the standard 18. But then you get to 18 50%, you might have an extra +1 to damage, or you get to 18 70% strength, and you'd have like an extra +1 to hit, and so on like that. I don't think it really goes into it here. And again, it was sort of this weird balancing mechanic where it just meant to give fighters, which basically seem to be assumed that Gygax seems to assume that people just sort of keep rolling till they, or figure out some way to get 18 strength, possibly by rolling your 17 and locking into being mature on your age rankings or something.
Yeah. Hunting for that wish.
I mean, if you got to spend 10 wishes and then you roll a 3 on your percentile, you're going to feel pretty hard done by.
Feel pretty hard done by might be a common feeling when dealing with this stuff. Okay, so the races, of course, have... It breaks us down a bit further then. Is there anything you want to look at there in the... So apart from the fact that strength gets its own separate mechanic that is different from everything else...
No, that's fine. I don't really want to go into the races section because this is where they wrote down basically all of the cliches that dog these... although I do feel like half-elves just sort of got
2 lines.
Yeah.
There's paragraphs and everyone else like, there you go.
Half-elves are usually much like their elven parent in characteristics, although to somewhat lesser extent than a pure elf.
And elves are often considered flighty and frivolous. Right. And this is the case when they do not believe a matter to be of import, like how long it's going to take to do the washing, as opposed to the half-orc, who's like, let's get the washing done very, very quickly. And the elf is like, well, it could take me 2 days, who knows.
This section does not have very nice things to say about half-orcs at all.
It's a very simple start. Half-orcs are boors. Rude, crude, crass, and generally obnoxious. I wonder why.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to particularly dwell on this. Although we could go into the next section, which is where the tables really begin.
No, let's not gloss over this. So it gives here's some kind of roleplay guides to each of these races. But then you get to half-orcs, and it just starts on half-orcs from the get-go and doesn't let up. Most are cowardly, they tend to be bullies, cruel to the weak. This does not mean that all half-orcs are hard, only most of them. Okay. So, don't worry, you'll be playing Drizzt the half-orc. You're a nice one.
Yeah, every cliche that has dogged the game for, well, nearly 50 years now, has it basically comes from this set of paragraphs.
Pretty much, yeah. Gnomes are lively, full of humour. Dwarves are dour, blah, blah, blah. Halflings are quite similar to gnomes. Don't worry, we'll be cutting one of you out every edition. We'll roll a dice to see which one.
Then it just goes, there's a complete left turn into character classes, but doesn't actually do the same breakdown of, this is what a fighter is, this is what an illusionist is. No, it goes straight into how you roll for followers.
There isn't a couple of pages missing by any chance. That's just, what?
I mean, there might be. We don't know exactly how many pages fell out of the pile of loose paper that was handed to poor, not Len Kafka, I've forgotten his name, Lawrence Schick. Yes.
It's starting to feel like he was just, okay, edit it, but don't reorganize it. It's like, whatever order you find them in this stack of paper, just put them in the book like that.
Oh yeah, this is interesting. I feel like there's context missing here, but I assume this is when you get to level 9, your so-called name level. This is what you're rolled to get your I don't know. Does it actually specify? Yeah. Sorry. Upon reaching certain levels and doing certain things, such as building a stronghold, they will be entitled to attract a body of followers. So this is your random. You get to level 9 or something, or you build your first castle or steal it from the orcs or whatever. You get to roll on stuff. But a lot of these, there's a very big disparity of what different classes get, because clerics just have this chance to get battle troops, whereas fighters will get battle troops and a special sidekick leader who might have magic items, and that's going to be, compared to how tough it is to get a henchman with who has any goddamn thing whatsoever, just part of getting followers. Sorry, I've looked 30 pages ahead into the henchmen and hireling rules, and they are way harsher than the random chance to get followers that you get here.
Yeah, to get quite a substantial number of dudes. So this is all higher level play stuff. We're done with creating characters at this point.
Yeah, this is followers for upper level player characters, but Like, why is it here in front of all of the lower level characters?
I guess because all the character creation stuff is in the player's handbook.
I guess that's
really. I mean, I'm not sure why we had to have all the previous stuff, but this is just. If you'll now that you've made your character and played it for 10 levels, here's the next way your characters advance. But we're going to put that in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So you're no longer just improving yourself. You're now building an organization or raising a militia or establishing a church, or what do rangers get? So clerics and fighters are both getting like a bunch of dudes, medium cavalry, or a company of...
Weirdly, the fighters get the exact number of guys they're getting,
clerics
but
don't.
Clerics just get heavy cavalry, plate mail and shield, lance, broadsword, and a mace. How many? Yeah, shut up.
Yeah, we'll see. Ask the deacon. And what do rangers get? Oh, they get animals that'll follow them around. Okay.
They have like, I feel like it's not clear whether you're supposed to roll 2d12 twice. Like 2d12 to see how many people you're getting, and then 2d12 to see how good they are. This is a cluster blump of.
Can I summarize here? Rangers get a whole lot of tables to roll on.
Yes, that is. I mean, you could end up getting just like a couple of level 1 rangers, or a dwarf fighter, or dwarf fighter thief. Or you could get a dog, or a magic dog, or you could get copper dragons with a random age for... I forget, they get like 9 age categories in these editions.
Goodness. Right, so the clerics and the fighters are playing Total War. The ranger is playing Heroes of Might and Magic. He can end up recruiting anybody. The thieves just get smaller thieves, more thieves.
Sorry, there's a different table for if you're a multi-class thief? Or...
Yeah, or an assassin. Or a multi-class assassin. Just going to cover some ground here. Rangers really get a chocolate box of stuff. They get the variety. Everyone else is like... You can have smaller versions of yourself, or a random militia, or a travelling zoo, if you're a ranger. Right. Then we've got the Paladin's Warhorse. Now this follows on from... Yeah, we went assassins, and we're straight into... No mention of how the Paladins advance, otherwise just Warhorse time. Let me tell you all about your new Warhorse. And that starts at 4th level. Okay. So, good for you. You're a Paladin. Well done. The dice shone on you. And while everyone's still trying to get their act together, at level 4 you get a horse. All your very own. And it will magically appear. It's there. It's going to be real awkward if you're on a seafaring adventure. You level, and you wake up the next day and there's just a horse in your cabin.
Simpsons reference insert here. Then we go from all of the special class abilities and special followers, which sort of goes... I mean, we've done previously an episode where we spent 30 minutes talking crap about Matt Colville and 10 minutes talking about how this kind of follower-centric game design works better for when you have a disparate group of PCs versus a cohesive unit who want to do everything together. So that's a separate, thought which doesn't even occur to Gygax here. He assumes...
We go from the Warhorse to spying, and I feel like this is like the smash cut version of editing. It's like... This is like when you watch a music video where there's 15 different things happening. It just keeps going back and forth between them. I am getting dizzy.
I don't even know how to summarize this section, but basically there's an awful lot of tables to make it difficult to just send spies, but potentially lucrative too if you shell out for like the big spies and you don't send them to do anything crazy. There's an awful lot of if you're trying to do something crazy, they have like high level guy only has like a 40% chance of doing it, or you could do it yourself. You big brave high level thief you. But yeah, it's like I can understand having a section of this type of thing in the book. It's horribly overdone and could be simplified in all kinds of ways. But I understand having it in the book. I don't understand it having here in the middle of character class special abilities, where reads much more like this is what your organization is doing. This is what you do in downtime.
It's a whole subsection, sub-rule set for running that kind of stuff. But this is kind of a grab bag anyways. He's got a lot to say about thieving and spying and setting traps and assassinating.
Yeah, I tried reading this section, and I do not think it. I'm not sure whether it's just badly designed or badly written, because it, like, trying to read it too hard just hurt my head. Yeah, it's basically a full page of this book is dedicated to spying. Before you even know how to hire a spy.
True. Yeah. Or what kind of spy you're going to be getting. Could be a half-orc, could be a gnome. And
then there's I would say this might be one of the meaner sections. It's basically about a page worth of explaining how to screw over your thieves. Now, for context, this is the classic style thief, where you start with 20 to 30% chance to succeed on any of your skill checks. And this is a list of ways on how to screw over people who attempt to use these skills to... How dare they use the skills their class gave them? Well, okay, not all of them are mean, but some of them are very mean. He's just finding traps, that's fine. You can find small traps, big traps, but you cannot find magical traps. Sure, whatever. But then there's this block of text on how to screw over anyone who tries to hide in shadows. Oh, you must find perfect darkness and cover between you and them. And don't you dare do anything so much as breathe loudly, or they will automatically find you. And it's... but actually the biggest section is on the climb wall skill, which is just you think you're Spider-Man, you fool? No! On your butt. Again and again.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at this. It's kind of interesting. Some of it's real macro stuff that feels like it's addressing how to run a large organization, and then, as you say, some of it is carefully don't trip up in your own feet. Almost the last thing in this section, the assassination experience. But so, why would you assassinate people? I mean, obviously it's fun, but you directly benefit in terms of experience points. There's a formula for working out just how valuable a kill is to you in terms of XP, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I can get that as a thing, but it just seems in stark contrast to the usual thing where it's everything else in the book seems to assume you're going to be diving into dungeons and getting all XP from gold, but this is this special thing where no. You get 100 XP per level of character assassinated, plus a bonus if they are higher level than you.
Wait, didn't we, in a previous episode, we talk about how this, at least at this level, or at this stage of the game, it just happened in the dungeon, and now we've got all this overworld stuff.
Yeah, it was weird. Gygax definitely had this sort of idea of sort of play cycle where people would be in the dungeon for their first 5, 6, 7 levels, and then all of a sudden they would be getting involved in politics because they had got all this money, and the only thing to spend the money on was on hiring people and buying castles. So clearly, at this point of the game, they're now going to start hiring people, hiring armies, and buying castles, and thus they will be involved in politics all of a sudden. And now we can start wargaming. And I don't think... The fact is that has basically disappeared from the game as of 2nd edition, essentially, implies that no one really got on this vibe. I can see the logic. I don't think people would be able to follow it as obviously as these veteran wargamers were. Because, as we've discussed in previous episodes, a lot of characters don't value suddenly becoming a feudal lord and taking over the realm and sitting on a big throne looking grim.
I think it's fair to say that any time the reward for a quest is your own keep or castle or lands, think very carefully before you take it. Management track is not for everybody. It's better to remain a technical specialist.
And despite Gygax's best efforts, you can't just have one character be running a castle in the background.
Oh, yeah.
RPGs have, for whatever reason, solidified as a group effort, and unless you're making the effort to have different characters do different things on their own, if one person is forcing castle management as a game, then that gets imposed on everyone else, which is why in so many games people don't bother.
Yeah, the adventure's life for me. Okay, so that's the whole assassin thieves things.
Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here.
Well, I'm looking at the clock, and we've kind of reached a natural break. Assassins use poison. Do you want to talk about that briefly before we finish?
Just a very brief thing. It's just like, this is the point where it very explicitly points out monster poison is save or die, but player character poison just does some bonus damage. It is explicitly written out here, the poison of monsters, regardless of its pluses or minuses to the victim's saving throw, is an all or nothing affair. That is, either they do no damage or they kill the victim within a minute or so. Poison potions generally do the same, or they may optionally elect to have any given one be slow acting, so the victim will notice nothing for 10 hours after quaffing it. Monster poisons are all effective by their ingestion or insinuation to the body and bloodstream of the victim. Poison potions must be ingested. If you allow poison use by characters in your campaign, users can purchase ingestive and insinuative poisons only, having to obtain dual use poisons from monsters.
Clear as muck, yeah. It's all good.
Yeah, it's basically just like you if you're buying poison, it's like it does Class D poison. I don't know. Like buying poison you buy is different from poison you harvest from the glands of wyverns or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's quality control.
It just seems like a mechanic to just say, no save or die poison for you. You can't just stab one guy with 5 different poison knives until he rolls the sleeves and die.
In fairness, he's got 5 knife wounds as well. He's got a lot going against him.
You'd be surprised how many knife wounds you can take when you're a level 9 fighter.
Yeah, I as few as possible, thank you. But I do know sometimes you do feel like a knife block.
Well, that leaves us at the top of page 21 with a lovely picture of, I think it's a green dragon, just bullying a whole bunch of kobolds who, to be
really
fair, are putting in the effort.
Yeah, they're going to turn his tail into a knife block. It's a lovely little illustration. Someone's probably done a diorama of it somewhere. It's kind of cool. And that will bring us on to next time. We'll start with the monster as a player character. We've covered, 10 pages? No, not quite 10 pages.
Yeah, almost 10 pages, but yeah.
Pretty good going for us. Who knows? See where we are by the end of the year. Episode 700, folks, when we'll be concluding the Tome of Gygax Part 1, the DMG. But yeah, if you've... we'll take us out now, shall we?
Yes.
Yeah, well, if you've enjoyed this, do grab a copy of the Dungeon Master's Guide 1st edition and read along, because myself and the Warlord do intend to do a few more of these. We're having some fun. It's interesting what you learn about how the game actually was back in the day, when it was still in the hands of one man and a very put-upon editor, by the look of it. But yeah, so we will shove this out the door at some point, and we'll come back to the DMG before too long. But until then, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to the Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventurePTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.